Hey guys, Scott here. Today we're going to go over the developer update for February 2023. This is a breathe right strip. It helps me breathe better. They're like $3 each for some reason, so I'm not taking it off for a video. Just pretend I got in a hockey fight to better understand Dead by Daylight. So we're going to go over what they've done here. It's a pretty short list, but first up, they're going over the Red Forest visual update. So I thought it was going to be the Crotus Print Asylum realm because that's the image that they used in the actual teaser for it. But instead, it's going to be Red Forest, which I still think absolutely needs an update as well. I think the Temple of Purgation is actually a fine map. I think that's fine. But Mother's Dwelling is way too big. I have no doubt they will be shrinking the absolute hell out of that map because it is by far the biggest map in the game. And it seems to be a tradition that they're making those big maps much smaller because big maps are significantly harder for killer. A couple of pictures that look pretty cool, just more aesthetic than anything. But really, I think what we're going to be interested in is the size reduction of the map, which I have no doubt we will see because why wouldn't they? Next, the whole map repeat prevention thing they talked about earlier was so you don't get the same maps over and over again. So whenever you are in a lobby, as soon as the game begins to load, it'll pick a map that everyone has not been on recently and then choose from there. So that is a nice little quality of life feature. I like this line though right here. It says, "No longer will you need to resort to map offerings and a plea to the entity to stop sending you to Fractured Cowshed." It's like they know Fractured Cowshed is an unplayably bad map for killer, and they're like, "Oh well, if only we could do something about that." Anyway, just change it. But yeah, it's a nice little quality of life feature, and I don't think anyone's going to complain about that. Bots were also improved a little bit. You can now customize bots. You can pick which perks and add-ons and stuff they have, which is pretty interesting. I'm curious to see how they're going to use like Dead Hard and stuff like that. If they're actually capable of doing that, it'll be interesting to mess around with. But it's really good if you want to test stuff, even just if you're not, a new player that's scared to go play against other players, just for testing stuff as killer. Just going against bots is nice. You don't need anybody. You just start it up, test what you need to do, and leave whenever you want. It's actually really nice for that kind of stuff. So I'm actually really happy to see more changes to bots, and we might eventually get to a point at some point where disconnected players are replaced by bots that can perform basic functions and are better than absolutely nothing. So I think that would be pretty nice, and more improvements to that. There's never really any complaints about that. Next, the big one. So Eruption has been taken out back and shot in traditional behavior nerf fashion. They don't usually go super tame on the nerf. They just sort of either completely remove it or completely overbuff the hell out of it, and there's just no in between. Eruption, unfortunately, actually pretty fortunately, because the meta has been extremely boring, has been taken out back and shot. It is basically, it's not useless, but it is no longer a premier game delay perk anymore. It'll still have some niche uses, but what it does now is instead of the survivors getting incapacitated, it reveals their aura for like 10 seconds, which, don't get me wrong, is a very, very long aura read, and killers like Blight and Nurse, ironically, can actually probably get more value out of this because they can get there as the aura is still active, which is pretty big. But the actual regression has been changed to current percent instead of total percent, which, I mean, nobody ever asks for that. Nobody wanted that with Pop. Nobody wanted with this. I don't know why they keep doing that, but that's definitely not something that anybody wanted. The overall main suggestions I've heard to fix Eruption were buff the regression and remove the incapacitate, or buff the regression a tiny bit and lower the incapacitate by a lot, so it's like 5-10 seconds, or just make it so the generator gets blocked. You're not incapacitated. You can still do a different gen. You can still heal. You can still heal somebody else. You can still do other actions. All of these are better suggestions than just completely removing the entire game delay aspect of the perk. And it doesn't really do much now. Eruption's pick rate will go down to basically 0. You might see a couple of Nurses and Blights try to make use of the aura reading. But other than that, it is just no longer worth using. Look, on the one hand, I am so sick of Eruption and I'm glad it's being made into a basically unusable state. On the other hand, that's not the proper way to go about balancing things. You still need to make them have redeeming qualities that are worthy of being picked. If you don't make everything of the same type of strength, all you do is just prop up different metas, rather than having a bunch of things be the same strength, because then you have interesting variations of builds because they're all sort of the same strength, and you're going to see different perks every game. But if you make something so bad that no one's ever going to use it, then you don't make it a meta shakeup. You just change it to a different meta. I guess that is technically a meta shakeup. You remove the variety and you just switch it to something else rather than have it be a plethora of different things you see every game. So that's never the correct way to do it. But I will say I will be happy to see Eruption no longer dominating every single killer game. for the past how many months. It's been pretty annoying. So not the proper way to go about doing it, but I will still be happy to not see that anymore. I got off the Eruption train months ago because A, I just thought it was too strong, and B, I figured they're going to nerf this. It's way too strong, so I might as well learn to play without it, and it's been fine. Just use Pain Resonance, Corrupt Intervention, whatever. There's still plenty of good slowdown perks. You will be fine. But it did need to change, but they think they went a little too far with that one. It's too weak now, in my opinion. Any means necessary is also getting a random buff. They're just removing the cooldown, which I don't think is going to do very much. Because typically the pallets that you would want to pick back up are going to be safe pallets, but safe pallets are going to be kicked almost every time because they're safe. The pallets that are not being picked up are unsafe pallets, but unsafe pallets usually don't have to be kicked to begin with. They can be outplayed at the actual pallet, with a couple of exceptions. I don't think the cooldown really changes anything unless you have a guy literally following someone in a chase the entire game, picking up pallets every time the killer is like nearby. I don't know. I think this is not going to have that much of an effect. It's just a nice quality of life thing to make any means necessary a bit more appealing to use. So I'm curious to see if we'll see more of that. I don't think it's really super game changing or anything like that. It's not often you're even in the area to pick up a pallet in the cooldown period. So it's whatever. I don't think it's going to be that big of a change. And then there's a couple of new cosmetic things that I don't really care about. If you guys are interested in this stuff, I'll post the patch note stuff. I've never really cared about cosmetics in this game. It's always been about the gameplay for me. But if you are interested, you can read the patch notes down below. But yeah, I really wanted to go over the whole Eruption thing because, yeah, a little too far in my opinion. I'm curious to see how the map reworks for Red Forest are going to go. But other than that, pretty decent. I just wish they didn't go a little too overboard with Eruption. That should be it. Thanks for watching.